It was a quiet Thursday evening when Maya's phone buzzed with a message she hadn't expected. The name flashing on the screen made her pause. Ethan Harper. She hadn't thought about him in over a decade, not since high school, not since the time that had changed everything between them. And now, here he was, reaching out as if no years had passed. Maya stared at the text for a long moment. The words were simple, almost too casual. "Hey, it's been a long time. Can we catch up?" Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Should she reply? Could she? Memories she had carefully tucked away threatened to surface. High school had been a roller coaster of emotions. Maya had always been quiet, more interested in books than parties. Ethan had been different, charming, a little reckless, and impossible to ignore. They had shared small moments, laughter in the hallways, notes passed in class, but there was always a tension she couldn't explain. Then one day, everything had shifted. A misunderstanding, a rumor. Suddenly, they were no longer on speaking terms, and she had spent years replaying that moment, wondering what really happened. Her heart beat faster as she remembered the final scene of that chapter in her life. It had been during the school talent show. Ethan had meant to apologize, or maybe explain, but he never got the chance. By the time she realized what had happened, he was gone, transferred to another school, leaving behind a trail of questions and unfinished words. Now, over 10 years later, he was here again, on her screen. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to protect the life she had built, the routines she had worked so hard to maintain. But another part, the part that still carried that old ache, couldn't resist. She typed back, hands trembling. "Hi, it has been a long time. Sure, we can talk." The reply came almost instantly, and Maya felt a strange thrill. "I'd love that. Are you free this weekend?" She spent the rest of the evening restless, caught between curiosity and caution. Memories bubbled up uninvited. His laugh, the way his eyes had crinkled when he smiled, and that unforgettable kindness he had shown when no one else had noticed her. But along with the warmth came the sting. The arguments, the awkward silences, the words left unsaid. On Saturday, they agreed to meet at a small coffee shop downtown. Maya arrived early, choosing a corner table that allowed her to observe without being seen immediately. Her mind raced. What if he was different now? What if he wasn't the person she remembered? And what if, after all this time, she still felt the same pull, the same connection she had tried so hard to forget? When Ethan walked in, the world seemed to narrow around her. He looked older, more settled, but there was something unmistakably familiar about the way he carried himself. Their eyes met, and for a moment, it felt as if no years had passed at all. "Hi, Maya," he said, his voice carrying the same warmth she remembered.
"Hi, Ethan," she replied, her voice softer than she expected. They talked cautiously at first, exchanging polite updates about jobs, cities, and families. But slowly, the conversation deepened. Memories spilled out, laughter returned, and somewhere in the middle of that bustling cafe, the years melted away. Then Ethan paused, his expression shifting. "There's something I've wanted to say for a long time," he said. Maya leaned in, heart tight. "I never meant for things to end the way they did back then. There's a truth I didn't tell you." Maya's stomach nodded. The truth. She had spent years wondering, imagining, constructing stories to fill the silence. Now here it was, the possibility of finally hearing what had really happened. Her mind raced with questions, yet she felt a strange calm. She had wanted closure for so long, and suddenly it was sitting right across from her. The cafe felt impossibly quiet as she waited for him to continue. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Ethan took a deep breath, eyes fixed on hers, and whispered a name she hadn't thought of in over a decade. It was a name that could change everything she had believed about the past. The name hung in the air, heavier than the coffee-scented quiet around them. Maya's mind froze. She knew that name. Everyone in her year knew that name. But hearing it from Ethan, hearing it now, brought a sudden wave of emotion she hadn't expected. Anger, confusion, and something fragile, almost forgotten, that felt like hope. I don't understand, she said softly, though her voice trembled. Ethan shifted in his seat, rubbing the back of his neck as if trying to find the right words. Back in school, I never wanted you to get hurt. Not by what I did. I wasn't brave enough to tell you the truth then. I thought I was protecting you. But I see now I was just afraid. Maya's hands gripped her coffee cup. Memories collided with reality. She remembered the whispers, the rumors, the isolation that followed that one incident. And now, suddenly, the possibility that everything she had assumed might not have been the whole story. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice firmer this time. Ethan inhaled slowly. "I never spread that rumor. I didn't even know who did. But I let it happen because I didn't stand up for you. And I've regretted it every day." Maya blinked. The anger that had been simmering for years was still there, but it mingled with a strange relief. He hadn't lied to her intentionally. He had been scared, just like she had been. She remembered how lonely she had felt, how every day at school had been a test of endurance. And now he was here, confessing, finally opening up after so many years. "I don't know what to say," Maya admitted, her voice breaking. "You have no idea how much that hurt me." "I do now," he said quietly, eyes fixed on hers. "And I want to make it right. Not by erasing the past, that's impossible, but by telling you the truth I should have told a long time ago." Maya nodded, her throat tight. She had spent over 10 years building walls around her memories, trying to convince herself she had moved on. But hearing him speak, seeing his earnestness, she realized some walls could finally come down. They spent the next hour retracing memories, laughing at shared moments they had almost forgotten, and grieving together for the misunderstandings that had kept them apart. Each story he told seemed to chip away at the resentment she had carried silently for so long. And then came a pause, a moment heavier than words, when Ethan looked at her and asked, "Do you think maybe we could start again? Not forgetting the past, but learning from it." Maya felt her heart skip. She had imagined this conversation countless times in her mind, but never with such clarity, never with such raw honesty. Could she really trust him again? Could she allow herself to feel something she had buried for so long? Before she could answer, her phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from her younger sister. "Are you sure you're okay meeting him after all these years?" Maya smiled faintly, almost to herself. She was beginning to realize that sometimes the past isn't just a shadow, it's a guide. And maybe, just maybe, confronting it could lead to something unexpected. The cafe seemed warmer now, the air lighter, but underneath it all, a storm of emotions still churned. She wanted to ask more, demand more clarity, but a part of her feared what she might uncover next. Ethan reached across the table, placing his hand gently over hers. "I owe you everything. I can't change what happened, but I can be here now, if you'll let me." Maya felt a tremor of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years, hope. But the truth he had promised still waited, like a locked door at the end of a long hallway. She knew that when it opened, nothing would be the same. And then, as if on cue, Ethan's expression darkened slightly. "There's one more thing," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something I didn't just fail to tell you, something I've kept from everyone." Maya's stomach twisted. She had survived years of misunderstandings, rumors, and heartbreak. Could she survive whatever he was about to reveal? The cafe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the secret that would change everything between them. Ethan's words lingered between them like a shadow that refused to lift. Maya's heart pounded as she leaned closer. "What is it?" she asked,
her voice barely above a whisper. He looked around the cafe, as if the walls themselves could hear their conversation, then lowered his voice even more. Back then, the truth isn't just about the rumor.
There was someone else involved. Someone I should have spoken up about. Someone whose actions I didn't stop. And it changed everything. Maya's hands clenched her cup. Her mind spun through names, faces, memories she had long tried to forget. "Who?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan hesitated, then exhaled slowly. It was someone close to both of us. Someone I trusted. And I didn't protect you when I should have. I thought I was powerless, but I wasn't. I just didn't know how to act. Maya's eyes widened. The pieces of her high school years, the whispers, the late nights alone in the library, the sudden distance from friends, started to align in a way that hurt more than she'd anticipated. "You mean it wasn't entirely about you?" she asked, the question tasting bitter on her tongue. He shook his head. "No, it wasn't. And I know that doesn't excuse my silence. I let you down when I should have stood by you. I should have spoken up. And I didn't." The weight of his confession pressed down on her chest. All those years of replaying events, of blaming herself, of feeling isolated and misunderstood, it suddenly had a face, a reason she could finally comprehend. And yet, it also came with a strange relief. At least now, she wasn't alone in her memory anymore. Someone else had carried a burden too. They sat in silence for a few minutes, the hum of the cafe fading into background noise. Maya stared out the window, trying to let the revelation sink in. She could feel anger bubbling, but it was mixed with understanding and even a flicker of empathy. I don't know what to say," she admitted finally. "You don't have to say anything," Ethan said softly. "Just listen. Just hear what I never told you before. You deserved the truth, and you deserved to know I wasn't the one who caused all of it. I was just caught in the middle, and I let fear silence me." Maya nodded slowly, her chest tight. She wanted to scream, to cry, to throw questions at him, but the words didn't come. Instead, she let herself feel the relief that came with finally understanding. Years of doubt and hurt were starting to dissolve, piece by piece. And then, as if testing the waters, she asked, "Why now? Why tell me after all these years?" Ethan's eyes softened, filled with a mix of regret and something deeper, something she hadn't felt in years. "Because I realized life is too short to carry secrets, too short to let mistakes fester. And because I never stopped caring, Maya, not for a single day." Her breath caught at the sincerity in his voice. She remembered the laughter, the kindness, the small gestures that had meant more than she'd realized back then. Maybe some feelings never truly fade. They just lie dormant until the right moment. For a moment, time seemed suspended. The past and present collided, bringing clarity and confusion in equal measure. Maya felt a pull toward him, a mixture of caution and longing that made her pulse race. But just as she was about to speak, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. I have to go," he said reluctantly. "Something's come up, something I didn't expect." Maya's chest tightened. The moment she had been waiting for, the full explanation, the closure, was slipping away again. She wanted to hold on to the conversation, to demand he stay until every word was spoken, but she could see the urgency in his eyes. Will you come back to finish this?" she asked, her voice soft but insistent. He nodded, his expression earnest. "I promise. I'll come back. And this time, I'll tell you everything. No more secrets." As he walked away, Maya felt a swirl of emotion she couldn't name. Relief, yes, but also a longing,
a hope that maybe the past didn't have to define her future. She sat back in her chair, staring at the empty space where he had been, and realized just how fragile life could be, and how vital it was to face the truths we avoid, even if they hurt. And then, just as she was about to gather her things, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway, one that she hadn't expected to see in years, a figure from her past who might hold answers that Ethan hadn't revealed yet. Maya froze as the figure stepped into the cafe, a presence from a chapter of her life she had thought was closed forever. It was Leela, her classmate, once a friend, then someone whose actions had left scars she carried for over a decade. Leela's eyes met hers, wide and slightly nervous.
"Maya," she said softly, as if testing the sound of her name after all these years. Maya's chest tightened. She hadn't expected this confrontation. Not today, not here, not while Ethan's confession was still echoing in her mind. "Leela," she said cautiously, her voice calm but guarded. Leela hesitated before stepping closer. "I heard you were meeting Ethan," she said, almost too casually. I wanted to see you, to say things I never could." Maya felt a mix of surprise and unease. She had spent years imagining this conversation, but now that it was happening, it felt heavier than she had anticipated. "Say what?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Leela swallowed hard. "About high school, about everything that happened. I wasn't honest with you. I was scared, and I made mistakes that hurt you, and I never apologized properly." Maya's mind spun. Pieces of the past clicked into place. The whispered rumors, the subtle betrayals, the feeling of being alone when she needed a friend most. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to demand answers. But a part of her knew that this moment had been inevitable. "You hurt me," Maya said quietly. "You know that, right? Not just once, but for years. And I had no idea why." Leela's eyes filled with tears. "I know. I've regretted it every day. I wanted to tell you the truth back then, but I didn't have the courage. And seeing you now, I just need you to know that I'm sorry. Truly." Maya took a deep breath, her emotions swirling. Anger, relief, sadness, and beneath it all, a strange, tender sense of closure. For the first time in over 10 years, she could see the truth without the distortion of rumors or fear. Ethan returned to the cafe at that moment, catching the tail end of the conversation. He paused, a gentle understanding in his eyes, and nodded toward Leela. "It's time for the full truth," he said quietly. Maya looked from Ethan to Leela, the threads of the past weaving together in a way that made sense at last. "I want to understand," she said. "I need to understand if we're going to move forward." And so they talked, the three of them in that small corner of the cafe, unraveled years of misunderstandings. Leela admitted her fear, her jealousy, and the choices that had driven her to act against Maya. Ethan shared the details of what he had seen, what he had tried to protect, and what he had failed to stop. Maya listened, sometimes nodding, sometimes silent, letting the words settle. She realized that what had seemed like betrayal wasn't always intentional. Sometimes people falter when they are afraid. Sometimes silence can hurt more than malice ever could. Hours passed like minutes. By the time they finished, the cafe was nearly empty, the sun dipping low outside the window. Maya felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Lightness. A weight had lifted. The past, with all its confusion and pain, was finally laid bare. Yet, amid the relief, a new emotion emerged, a cautious hope. Could she trust again? Could she allow herself to care, to feel, to open her heart to someone who had once been so entwined with her past? Ethan reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle, familiar. "You don't have to answer now," he said softly. "I just want you to know I'm here, and I always will be." Maya looked at him, her heart a fragile mix of fear and anticipation. She had spent years building walls,
And now, for the first time, she considered letting someone in. And just as she thought she might finally have a moment of peace, her phone buzzed again. A message notification flashed. "Maya, we need to talk. There's something you don't know yet." Her stomach sank. The past had been unearthed, but clearly, not all the truths were finished revealing themselves. Maya stared at her phone, the message glowing in the fading light of the cafe. Her heart raced. Just when she thought the past had been fully uncovered, there was still one more piece she hadn't seen. She hesitated, then opened it. The message was from an unknown number. "Maya, it's time you know everything. Call me." Her fingers trembled as she dialed. The voice on the other end was calm, but carried a weight that made her pulse quicken. "Maya," the voice said, and she recognized it immediately. It's someone who's been trying to protect you all along, someone who knew more than anyone else.
Her mind flashed back to everything Ethan and Lila had told her, the misunderstandings, the secrets, the pain. She had begun to forgive, to reconcile, to let go. And now there was one final revelation waiting. Back in school, the voice continued, there was a situation no one understood fully. You were caught in the middle of choices that weren't yours, and some people, well-intentioned people, tried to shield you. One of those choices affected Ethan, Lila, and you more than anyone realized, but I kept it secret to protect you. Maya felt a chill. Her pulse thrummed in her ears. "Why now?" she asked. "Because it's time," the voice said gently. "It's time for you to have the whole story, so you can finally move forward without shadows from the past." She ended the call, her hands shaking. The truth she had been chasing for over a decade was finally within reach. Her mind raced, but instead of fear, she felt clarity. Every conversation, every confession, every long-buried secret had led her to this point. Ethan returned to her side just as the cafe was closing. His eyes searched hers, full of unspoken questions. "Everything okay?" he asked softly. Maya took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, I think I understand now. Everything." He smiled gently, relief and hope mingling in his expression. "So, are we ready to start over? To really start over?" She hesitated, then reached for his hand. "Yes," she said, "but this time, no secrets, no half-truths, just honesty." He squeezed her hand, a silent promise that they could finally rebuild what had been broken, together. In that moment, Maya felt a lightness she hadn't known in years. The shadows of the past still existed, but they no longer held power over her. She had faced the truth, confronted the pain, and chosen forgiveness, not just for Ethan and Lila, but for herself. As they walked out of the cafe into the cool evening air, the world seemed wider, brighter, and full of possibilities. For the first time in over a decade, she felt free to embrace the future without fear. And though questions would always remain, she understood something vital. The past doesn't have to define the future. Sometimes it takes courage, honesty, and a little faith to rewrite the story you thought was over. Hand in hand, they stepped forward together, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that love, trust, and truth could finally guide them home. The journey had been long, painful, and full of uncertainty, but it had led her exactly where she needed to be, at the start of something new, something real, and something entirely worth holding on to.